It's quite rare for StarCraft 2 replay files to be over 1 megabyte large. Usually whenever there's a new replay pack available, I download all of the games and I sort them by file size first. And I noticed that game number 1 and game number 2 of this best of 5 series are both over a megabyte big. So I hope you got yourself a drink. I actually just ran out of coffee, but I've got a very large bottle of water, because I think we are in for what should be an absolute banger of Terran versus Zerg. Spotting right here in the top left-hand corner, playing with the blue SCVs. We're looking inside of the main base of Clem. Down in the bottom right, playing in red, from South Korea, we have a Rogue. Okay. Now, obviously, just because a replay is large, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's also going to be a very long game. I have seen some games over the years where, for example, the Zerg makes just non-stop links the entire game long, and I think you can probably get to like a megabyte or so in a replay file size in about 20 minutes of in-game time. But every once in a while, and I've had this in the past too, we get these very slow, drawn-out macro games where it can quite literally, well, take the entire map to mine out before the players will engage. Considering, though, that this is Clem is a very aggressive Terran player, especially in the early to mid-game, right? He's not afraid to, well, go out onto the map in the late game either. I think we probably are in for a more active style. Obviously, what we did see about a half year or so ago from Rogue was him focusing heavily on the mass changeling in the late game. Remember that style? We haven't seen it much ever since. None of the other Zerg players really picked it up. When a Rogue figured out that it was strong, I'm still not entirely sure why he's really the only one that really perfected it, but there was a time when Rogue, in the late game of Zerg versus Terran, would make like 20, 30, 40, up to like 50 Overseers, and just flood the map with changelings, and effectively force his way through the Terran defenses to put down Nidus worms everywhere. So that's what I'm secretly hoping for this series, but let's find out together. It's 6 links here in the earlier stages of the game for Rogue. That is 2 more than what we normally see. He also did not bother delaying the link speed at all, so that does mean he's going to be defending this Reaper with relative ease, and he should be able to power up a third as well. There it is. He should be able to power it up, but this is a very safe approach here from Rogue. With 6 links, you're really not supposed to lose everything, or anything, really. So most of the players in StarCraft 2 make 4 links to defend against the first Reaper. In a way, it's almost also a little bit of respect, because Clem, generally speaking, has probably the best early game Reaper micro in the entire game. Gotta be very careful. So forcing out 6 links will probably already put a smile on Clem's face, because it means that there is 1 less drone mining. So even though he didn't get a kill, he still got a little bit of damage done. Third command center already inside of the main. Triple command center 111. Actually, no. It's not a triple command center 111. It's a triple command center 2-1. And then probably a starport eventually. But this is a heavy focus on Marines here. Most of the time, this is not the style that Clem goes for. Most of the time, he goes for a starport after the factory. But in this particular instance, he's got that very fast 3rd CC, and he's going to be pumping out the Marines 3 at a time here in just a moment. It does mean that we're not going to be seeing any Banshee harassment, no Liberators flying around the map, and while the Hellions can put on a little bit of pressure, usually it means that Zerg is going to be left to themselves for at least a little while. And you got to be careful as a Terran, because if you leave the Terran, or if you leave the Zerg Raider alone for too long, the creep is going to spread like crazy. And at some point, you can't really stop it. There's the starport right now on the back of this, though. This will probably lead to a Marine drop at, I want to say, maybe like 5.5 minutes or so of in-game time. Maybe a little bit later than that. For the time being, it's only 10 links here. And while Rogue did make an extra set a little bit earlier, all of the focus really has gone to drones and queens. And we're already going for queens 7 and 8 right here. Double Evo chamber as well before a lair, so pretty greedy start here from Rogue. Most of the time we see Zerg players favoring that lair into like a quicker baneling speed, but Rogue is going to be delaying that in favor of what will probably be +1 melee and then +1 carapace. It's really nice if you want to play Ultras later on. Obviously, it's quite risky if you are going up against a Terran who may very well be going for some mid-game timing attacks with bio units. It's also a pretty fast armory over here, actually, for Clem. So it's not just going to be Marines with Stimpack. It's going to be Marines with Stimpack, and then on top of it, a bunch of Hellbats. Now, against Hellbats, Queens are really good. But you really would prefer having something a little bit beefier, or something maybe a little bit more explosive in the form of Roaches or Banelings to really properly stop this. But if you have the Zergling numbers, it should still be fine. We actually see him going up to 10 Queens now. Already anticipating this move out, I believe. He's going to likely lose a bunch of those Queens, so they're being replaced ahead of time. And you know what? It's not going to be +1 melee. It's going to be +1 missile and Carapace here for Rogue. Okay, he doesn't even have a Roach Warren. No units here will benefit from it just yet, but let's see. Nice little bit of damage so far, though. The Queens are in the front to try and tank some of the damage. I don't really love this, though, here for Rogue. No, the Marines right now going in for the hug of death. Reinforcing links are popping out, but with the Hellbats in the middle, the damage is certainly going to be dealt here by those units. Usually the Hellions really fall off the longer that the game goes on, but this is about the most damage that Clem can hope for. Normally you have the Zerglings on the units and then the Queens on the Medivacs, right? That's usually the approach, or at least a little bit more of like a surface area spread on the Queens to try and mitigate the splash damage of the Hellbats. Ultimately, this army will get cleaned up, but this can still certainly be called a very good success here for Clem. In the meantime, he also used this as a moment to get that start base up and running. He fired up the 1-1 research. We do have a Hydralisk's Den right now on the back of this. Instant infestation pit as well here, so despite everything, we're still going to be going up towards a very quick hive. I'm guessing this is going to lead to lurkers, but I have lately seen a bunch of the Zergs from Korea play this really weird mass Hydra strategy. The games that Shin, for example, recently has been playing, they come to mind. Remember that final game between Shin and Maru, for example, where he also did it against Cure, where he went for like mass Hydra and then more Hydra, and he didn't really attack with it, but he just made more. It was weird. I don't think I really like it. Clearly, though, some of the Korean Zergs do. This might be something a bit more conventional, though. I guess the main thing that's sort of throwing me off is the fact that we do not have a Baneling Nest at all. No Baneling Nest. I guess you can get Infestors out. We've seen players like, for example, Raynor experiment with this. We do see the Hive. It's the Lurker Den. Okay. So, Hydraling into Lurkers, but we are skipping out on Banelings? Well, at least the little changeling will scout that there is indeed another army of the Terran coming across. 4th Command Center was added into the mix too here. We've got ourselves a reactor onto the 2nd factory out front. So Clem really just putting on a bunch of pressure while building up his economy. I think if he knew, though, that this was indeed a Banelingless Zerg, he could go for big damage. If this is like a 8-Rex all-in, if that's what we would see here coming out of Clim, it's not the case because we already have a 4th Command Center, but without Banelings, how are you going to deal with it? Well, Lurkers, I guess, would be nice. Fungal Growth is decent, and there is a Baneling Nest coming now, but it feels very late. He's probably going to be able to get away with it, though. This drop over here from the Terran is decent. It's not really a drop. It's more like a move out. The units did bring the Medivacs, but they didn't fly here. What about the push on the left? We do get a Drilly Clawed Widow Mine here. Trying to be annoying, but of course, yeah, you got to be careful. Nice split here. You got to be careful because Hydras actually outrange Widow Mines. It's very easy here to get a little bit confused by it. 2-2 a bit delayed here by Clem. Not the end of the world, though. Because indeed, he does already have 4 base economy incoming. And considering the Zerg is only on 4 bases, I don't think he can be too upset about the whole setup. Seismic Spine's coming up. That's the ranged upgrade for Lurkers. Baneling Speed now finally researching. It seems to me like getting to this point, like ultimately the Zerg army is going to be very normal, but the way he got there feels very convoluted to me. And kind of suboptimal. There's just a lot of vulnerability here. Fungal. Ooh, Clem not expecting the fungal growth there at all. Siege Tank actually putting in a lot of supplemental damage. And with the links coming in around the back, that'll be the end of this Terran army. Goodbye. No Banelings required. There is still a secondary push as well on the left side. But a bunch of lurkers are already set up. Ooh, Clem was thinking it was Brood War there for just a moment. Zergling counterattack together with Hydralisks, but I don't think you guys can really achieve much. Concussive shells still quite useful. I guess the reason that a lot of Zergs are going for this very quick infestor type of approach rather than Banelings is because Terrans just don't expect it. It's just weird to have a bunch of infestors with fungal energy ready to go. But I don't believe it's actually that good for Zerg. It might just be decent because nobody expects it. And we've seen that time and time again in StarCraft, where like players figure out something that works, but it only really works because nobody's really done it before, and it just takes a bit of an adjustment period. But for the time being, at least, it seems to be working out okay-ish, sort of. But this wasn't a particularly quick hive, and we still went Banelings anyways, so I'm not sure what gain you really got here as the Zerg. You just kind of lose any sort of real counter-attack potential, right? Anyways, Widowmine drop going in here for Clem. Super defensive style here thus far, though, for Rogue. Rogue is basically saying, yo, you can attack me, but you can never really kill me. But Clem doesn't care. Clem's economy itself is already really solid. Clem has already begun the transition towards late game, so we've got the Ghost coming. We will probably see a second starport in a moment. We don't have one yet. We're focusing on the Ghost and the command centers for now. +3/+3 coming up as well for the French Terran. Oh, and you know what? The Overseers, they're coming. Yep. I haven't seen this in months. Double Nidus Worm. Mass Overseer. So the problem is these little guys, right? They were never really designed to be massed. And no other Zerg player is ever massing it. But the problem here for Terran is that these changelings will show up as his own army on the minimap. There is really no easy way for him to differentiate between the units. Now, this little skirmish here is really good for Clem. But basically, as soon as these changelings change into, like, a Terran unit, like that, look at the minimap right now. This is how they will appear as well for Clem. Like, they will appear as actual Terran units. So, as long as you have enough changelings running around, and you just sort of right-click them all over the Terran bases, some are basically guaranteed to get into the main. And this is when, like, the double Nidus Worm is extremely annoying. There it is. Thank you, Rogue, for making me look smart. Still, Clem was paying attention to this, and Clem has obviously played against this a bunch before. He actually had some famous rage quits earlier in 2025 when he played against this style for the first time. I think he forgot he was on camera, but he did a full-on Hulk smash on the keyboard when he played a game against Rogue. So basically, the build order was enter, GG, enter, leave the game, then Hulk smash. So it was a very polite Hulk smash. It's not like he rage quit the game itself. But I don't think that was meant to be seen by anyone. But he forgot that the camera was on, I guess. Anyhow. Clem doesn't like playing against this style because it's extremely annoying. The way, obviously, that Terrans work, right? The longer that the game goes, the further away they will be from the main, right? So right now, the Terran is still kind of stuck in their starting quadrant, I suppose. But if you want to take this base over here, if you want to start taking the other corner, it gets very tricky. You have to leave units behind to try and deal with it, but you do have to spread your defenses very thin to try and deal with it. For now, though, Clem is dealing with everything quite nicely. Likewise, Rogue is not really struggling with anything in particular. Man, bunch of Widowmines just walked next to the Lurker. Another fungal growth right over here. We still have an insane amount of Overseers on the screen, too. Just to be annoying. Keep in mind that these little changelings can also body block whatever pathing we've got over here. They're not quite a Protoss force field, but they can sort of function in the same way if you drop enough of them in a choke point. And this is so APM intense for Terran to pull off. So for Zerg, they will just hold down the button to drop as many changelings as possible. For Clem, he's gonna have to, well, kill every single one of them individually. And in theory, at least, I think the Mass Overseer style, it sounds kind of broken, right? But nobody else is playing it, other than Rogue. So, I don't know. But I feel like in theory, any unit that has a free unit design, it's just not a good concept. But I guess we're now, well, nearly 16 years into StarCraft 2. Yeah, nobody's really mass lurkers to a point where it's, or sorry, overseers to a point where it's considered to be OP. But we've had very similar problems with, for example, Swarm Host back in the day, right? Where that unit was just unbalanceable, mostly because of the fact that there were free units coming out of it. I actually think if you're ever going to design a modern RTS, any sort of free unit design, be it mules, be it like infested Terrans, be it Swarm Host, be it what, gotta be extremely careful with that. So far though, Clem is deflecting everything. Caduceus Reactor is going to finish up. We have building armor, researching, high-sec auto-tracking coming up. All of these are like luxury upgrades for the Terran. They're certainly not important, but they're really nice to have. Another Nidus does go up. But we have a small hit squad of Terran units, actually, that have been setting up shop to try and deal with this sort of thing. And obviously, the Overseers are not free. And likewise, neither are the actual Nidus worms. And thus far, I mean, nothing's really been done with them, right? Like, nothing's really been achieved. Natural expansion, likewise, now also being a bit of a nuisance. But again, oh, you can't technically target it from there. But it's so tricky because now we're splitting up the worms. And as soon as one of them goes up, a bunch of lurkers pop out, right? It can be so annoying for the Terran to try and deal with it. And now at the same time, we're going to see a push at the front. Hydraling Bane flying around here. Speaking of flying around, those Liberators should have been set up already. It's just very APM intensive. It's not really resource efficient for Zerg in theory, but it's extremely APM efficient for Zerg. So despite the fact that Clem is the one with almost 100 average actions per minute on the opponent, he is still trying his absolute best to put out all of the fires. And with an economy of 95 drones, some of them even golden minerals as well coming in right now, yeah, Rogue is not going to run out of cash anytime soon. He's now actually making a move towards the impossible base on the left. Well, I guess nothing is impossible when you have 50 banelings. Although we probably want to kill it. There we go. This is usually a base that Zergs like to leave alone. Lurkers, though, in the meantime, still dealing damage. 19 SCVs end up going down. Now, what Rogue does have to be concerned by, though, is this maxed out Terran army. It looks like Clem has decided that now with the orbital command count being big enough, he's no longer going to replace lost SCVs. That means he's now effectively dedicating about 150 of his total supply to making a massive army. And that just means that there's like 50 supply more available for army only than the Zerg will ever be able to use. Gotta be careful you don't get deathballed here as the Zerg player. You need to be able to remax multiple times. And at this point, the Zerg's army is more expensive than the amount of resources that he's got in the bank. So despite the fact that he's rich, I don't know if he's rich enough. 31 Overseers. Basically pure Hydraling Bane. Actually, another little annoying thing with Overseers is that you can kind of cover the screen with them. So, in like the main engagements, right? Zerg needs to micro a lot. But Terra needs to split up their units. You need to actually split your troops into little clumps to try and mitigate the Baneling splash damage to make sure that the fungal growths don't destroy you. But if half the screen is covered by Overseers, so the pro gamers play at this zoom level, I oftentimes zoom out during the fights, but that's not how the pro gamers actually play. They're at this zoom level right over here with a large interface at the bottom as well. If you can't see your troops, you can't micro them. It sounds so obvious, but Overseers covering the actual screen, extremely annoying. And obviously, these units don't cost any supply for Rogue. As a matter of fact, they grant supply. They're just like an upgraded version of the Overlord. So what if you have 100 Overseers on the screen? The only bottleneck, really, is the amount of resources it costs. Here we go. Abductions going in, though, and this is a very high amount of Liberators. Hydra's trying their best, using their dash ability to get underneath, but that's way too many libs. Corruptors now coming up for Rogue to try and specifically deal with those, but despite the fact that Clem has been taking a beating for a while now, he wins the straight-up engagement here in the middle of the map and takes down one of the expansions of the Zerg. Nidus worms immediately, though, again to retaliate. Okay, Clem doesn't want to really move too deep onto creep. You never know if there's going to be burrowed lurkers or banelings or infestors waiting on the site. May as well move back out. Nidus worm goes up indeed. There's a couple of Widowmines waiting. This time around, it's actually not a planetary fortress in this base over here that got cleaned up. So that means that the lings alone are going to be plenty good. And it's another thing that these little changelings scouted. Here goes the cloud of overseers. Dude, it seems so insanely annoying to play against. Hey, look, it's Larry. Larry, the accidental swarm host, is coming up. Good to see you, Larry. These pocket expansions, though, or these corner expansions, rather, are really good. Okay, Clem is thinking about it right now, too. Like, where is this money coming from? Rogue has the top right as well as the bottom left taken simultaneously. And it's one of the reasons why he can keep throwing away so many resources. Orbital command count is still massive, though. We're at 10. And with 10 orbitals, yeah, 40 SCVs will actually do just fine. Terran army scrambling back into the main base. A lot of Widowmines, though. Ooh, sorry. I think we missed what is a very spicy set of detonations here from those Widowmines. I backed up about 15 seconds in the in-game replay. Can we watch the explosions again? That's what Clem calls them. The explosion. Ooh. Ooh. Okay, you know what? That wasn't as spicy as I expected it was. Mostly just a bunch of lings dying. Not really that much friendly fire dealt. The explosion. The widow mine. Or mine the widow. As they probably say in France. Who knows? Who knows? The centre de command. I had French in school for many years. The only thing I really remember is swear words. They didn't teach me those in school. And then the fact that a lot of words for some reason are backwards. Yeah. More CCs coming up. And look at the little changelings just running around every which way. They're just constantly all over the bases. And initially, Clem was trying to take care of them, and he's still putting in some effort as far as that goes. But he knows that it's also just not really possible. It's not really a viable choice to try and kill them all. There's just too many. Ooh. I think, though, Rogue is throwing away too much stuff. Can we have a look at the resources lost? Yeah. We have about, like, what, 13, 14 or so thousand resources lost more on the side of the Zerg than the Terran. And that will more than make up for the lesser amount of mining here that the Terran player is doing. Still, though, Rogue has cash. And he's not afraid to throw it in your face. More and more banelings coming up. Those corruptors added into the mix are actually really sweet. There's double spire upgrading in the Zerg player's natural expansion for a while already. More and more drones are dying too. 581 links. Another hatchery kill. Looks like the command center that was trying to turn into a planetary here may also be in a bit of trouble. We have a fake group of Marines trying to surround all of this. Yeah, and speaking of French swear words, I can imagine that Clem is at least mumbling a few of them at this point. Half his Marine army is not even real, man. Actually, more than half. He's got 28 real Marines. Can we see how many changelings there are? Yeah, there's literally more changelings out on the map right now than real Marines. It's just obnoxious. There's too many problems here for the Terran, man. The only thing he can do right now is move. When your house has too many problems, at some point, There's no solution. Just gotta move. All right, is there enough for the Terran to fight, though? My god. Yeah, the actual size of the Terran army was not that big. Readability there kept to a minimum, but that's of course favoring Rogue. We have an infestor showing up here. All right, fungal growth before he gets shot by the Liberators, or liberated by the Liberators. And that may actually be another little advantage of like the mass changeling groups wandering around the map. Usually StarCraft players will keep their screens in the same location for a very short amount of time. So you like sort of glimpse at the monitor, you look at the fight roughly, and then you decide, okay, my units are indeed in plentiful numbers to take on my opponent's army. But if you're here in Clem's shoes and you take a very quick look at what you actually have out on the screen, when half the units are not even yours, yeah, pain. Still, he's managing it wonderfully. Both players, interestingly enough, are broke. Gold base in the far bottom left is mining out. And at this point, Rogue is actually in trouble. The base here in the top right-hand corner is critical for the Zerg player to deny. But the Terran's army is looking so large now that I really don't know if he can do it. Fungal growth may just be an absolute game changer, but Clem is backing up to the safety of the Widow Mines. Liberator's still up in the air, trying their absolute best, and it looks like the Ling Bane army here is going to force the retreat. Perfect denial by Rogue in the end, considering the tools that he had. Greater Spire now coming up, so this is Rogue making an attempt at a somewhat more sustainable army. He knows that these Ling Bane forces are gonna, yeah, fizzle out as long as this game keeps going the way that it is. Keep in mind, of course, that Clem has a lot of mules. Yep. He doesn't need a ton of income. He's nearly maxed out. Actually remaking SCVs now. Planetary Fortress in this choke point is going to be a banger. Are you going to go, Rogue? Oh, Rogue does go, and he gets a perfect fungal to start this fight off. Then again, though, it runs out by the time the Lings and the Banes actually close the distance. We do have the Zerglings going to town onto that mineral line, but the Planetary will finish up. And now it's Clem who's ready to go on the offense. What a beautiful game of StarCraft, by the way. Yeah, GG gets called. Clem, he manages to obtain the victory in one of the best games of StarCraft 2 that I've seen in a bit. GG. Okay, and that will take us to the map 10,000 feet. I think Rogue probably plays that strategy against Terran players on the ladder all the time. And I can imagine he probably takes down Terran players in the late game all the time. But that was absolute textbook by Clem. An incredibly difficult textbook. It's one of those medical textbooks, you know, that for some reason just, yeah, can only be understood by a few people. You're noticing, by the way, the little bit of SCV micro he's doing over here? You see how some of them are zooming back a little bit faster? It's a little trick that Terrans have been... Zergs have problems as well, but mostly the Terrans seem to be really enjoying it, where they zoom that worker back as quickly as possible. He doesn't manage to pull it off every single time, but it's a way that you can speed up the movement of the units. Takes a lot of APM though, and only really something you can do in the first minute. It's always nice though, when you see players struggle with a strategy for some time, to the point where they are rage quitting, and then sometime later you check back in and they have found the solution. Now it turns out there was no easy solution. Takes a lot of effort, but managed to, yeah, figure it out and dealt with it pretty much perfectly. So what do we do now, Rogue? Do we switch up the strategy entirely? Have you figured out something that maybe should have been changed? Because ultimately you do still, even though it's a very APM intensive style for the Terran to counter, you do still rely on the Terran to make a mistake. To not be able to deal with all of the mass Nidus worms and all of the aggression all over the map, right? It still requires the opponent to make a mistake. So, yeah, I can imagine it works against basically everybody, except for the highest ranked Terran player on the planet. Command center on low ground, SCV scout into a Reaper. I would actually actually like to see Rogue play a little bit more Mutaling Bane. He used to be very fond of Mutaling Bane back in the day. We've been seeing other Zerg players from Korea really enjoying the Muta styles. Apparently Rogue, though, at least in game number 1, not so keen on it. I've seen him play it a little bit as well in the new patch. It's difficult. I don't remember really seeing games where Clem lost to Mutaling Bane, so... I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure I even casted some, but... in my mind, Clem is just such a scary defensive player that it's difficult to really pull off any sort of real tricks. That seems to be Clem's general approach, right? Just try to play the survival game for as long as possible, then overwhelm. Okay. Triple command center build here from the Terran. Straight 1-1-1 this time around, so barracks, factory, starport. Probably see a tech lab here in a moment. Do the switcheroo. A little bit of Hellion Banshee. Triple hatchery opener here for Rogue. He did pull out of gas. Link speed is going to finish up. Wouldn't be surprised if Rogue maybe does some sort of roach shenanigans as well this time around. He seems to always be fond of that style. Roaches into ultras. He plays that quite frequently, but I also don't know if you really want to do that against Clem. Because in that sort of situation, Clem will go heavily into ghosts. And I don't think it really favors the Zerg late game too much. I'm honestly not entirely sure. What do you do here if you're Rogue? Well, we'll figure it out. Cloaking field even coming up. This has been spotted by the Zerg. He saw the little green light on inside of the tech lab. And at this point, I mean, there's a bunch of upgrades available in that tech lab. But at this point, the only thing that makes sense is the Banshee's personal cloaking. We'll probably see some spore crawlers here. Between like 430, 450. Depending on how worried Rogue is. 4.5 minute lair though, first and foremost. Extra barracks on the back of this. Clem really not favoring any of those mech styles, right? We've been seeing, for example, Maru have a lot of success with Terran mech. Even on the most recent balance patch, he's been playing it, well, I wouldn't say frequently, but he's been playing it enough. I don't believe I've seen Clem really play it a single time. Ever since the Cyclone got nerfed, he apparently doesn't believe it's that good of a build order to go for. Engineering base in the meantime, though, in the back. And it does mean that he is inviting a very similar game yet again. Now, I guess there is one thing to keep in mind. Even if Rogue does the exact same strategy once more, and even though technically Clem may have all the tools to counter it, you gotta keep in mind, and this is a bit of a stretch, okay, but bear with me, you gotta keep in mind that professional gamers are humans. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're all, I've met basically all of them. They are humans. And humans do fatigue. It means that you need to consume calories and sometimes like even like basically go AFK for like 7, 8, maybe 9 hours or so. Close your eyes, basically be non-existent for some time while hallucinating all sorts of things and processing the day. It's a confusing thing that humans do. But it does mean that if you play intense games of StarCraft like the one that we just saw, margin for error is absolutely tiny. I can imagine that type of game is more exhausting for the Terran than it is for the Zerg. StarCraft 2 commentators, though, are not human. But I think everybody already knew that. That's probably no that's probably no surprise to any of you.
Subscribe, guys. My actual voice.
Okay, no. Or is it? I don't know. It's going to be a quick Hydra then yet again. Quick +1 missile. Carapace as well on the back of this. Faster Baneling speed, though, this time around. No, you don't need a lot of APM to cast StarCraft. That helps a lot. You just have to understand the game a little bit. If that. Who knows? Once upon a time, I got asked, as we do see this medevac drop, not really achieving much. Once upon a time, I got asked to cast a Dota game. This was a StarCraft 2 tournament organizer who organized a Dota match, and they asked if I wanted to cast it, and I, for some reason, said yes, even though I don't play Dota and I don't understand the game at all. People still watched. For some reason, man, I don't know. Maybe you guys are really bored. I don't know. But people still tuned in for it. I remember loads of sparkles and very interesting graphical effects. That is about the extent of my Dota knowledge right over there. Lurker Den again, together with a Hive. Drilling Claws again on the other side of the map, together with a 4th Command Center. We are basically playing a copy of the previous game. Different strategy here from Rogue, different opener here from Clem. But across the board, the roads will still lead to a very similar... yeah, very similar spot. This, by the way, is always something that is brutal on this map. You can just sit behind this little cliff, and as long as you have vision, you can deal a lot of damage. Now, apparently, Rogue decides to pull the trigger. This seems very risky to me. Fungal Growth doesn't do much. I think there might just be barely enough. That Widowmine actually helping out quite a bit, too. Shout out to the Widowmine doing friendly fire. Okay, Rogue actually cleaned that up, but that was extremely risky. Nice little target firing as well with the Banshees, though. No, I do love casting games. One of my absolute favorite things to do. Glad there's still people watching them. Do we have enough here for the Zerg to clean this up the second time around? I'm with Clem here. I think just going back to the same spot is smart. Because it's so tricky for Zerg to actually come in from one angle like that. Unless you get a wraparound on the army. But if you're fighting the Terran off creep and you're coming in through one choke, I don't think it's really beneficial. 2-2 is just moments away from finishing. That's usually when Terrans go for the big attack. And obviously, Clem is a pretty aggressive Terran, so he doesn't mind just doubling down the pressure. But yeah, I think with the extra upgrades kicking in here in the next half minute, it's not a bad idea for him to keep it up. Rogue trying to use the Infestors yet again. Lurkers are coming, though. And Lurkers will make all of this defense way easier. You don't need that many. Oh, he actually cancels them. He shows the Lurkers and then cancels them? What? I guess he already had 3, so he didn't want more? That's pretty nuts. Fight over on the left side. Okay, another fungal growth that connected. And all of this feels a little flimsy, but Rogue really didn't lose that much. Only 8 drones have died in total in this game. The hatcheries are still up and running. The worker count is still very healthy. Still, Clem is keeping up the pressure. And one big advantage, I guess, of this pressure constantly going down on the Zerg side of the map is that he's not really had to deal with the Mass Overseer. There's no Nidus worms going down left, right, and center, although we did have one on the production tab just now. Gonna finish in just a moment. Ooh, Widowmines do get the good enough connection there in the end. Lovely. Yeah, great game here. Yet again. These two are extremely evenly matched. This particular best of 5, by the way, is from the Wardy Championship. So it's a $7,500 tournament. A lot of good replays from that particular series is what I've heard. Looks like the first Nidus is up in the main base. But it does mean that both of these players will try their absolute best. You're not going to play stupid, dumb strategies that you don't really truly believe in. If there is a significant amount of money on the line. Now, with the Nidus Worm going in, though, immediately Clem has decided to change the pace of the match a little bit. So, 4 command centers got added into the mix. Ghost production has started up. +3/+3 inside of the engineering bay. It means that Rogue finally gets a moment to clean up the, well, literal minefield. Doing a little bit of minesweeping. But he also gets to build up his bases again. Do you think either of these two players are actually good at Minesweeper? There's definitely StarCraft pro gamers out there that are good at, like, random things. Like Rubik's Cubes or juggling or, you know, speedrunning Minesweeper. Yeah, that's another thing I've learned from pro gamers over the years. It turns out they're really good at games. I know. First they're human, now I'm telling you they're good at games. But I mean, even games that they've never played before, they tend to be good at. I know. What a crazy idea. The only reason I'm half decent at StarCraft is because I grinded it a lot. I face tanked my way to Grandmaster League, okay? It's not because I have any talent whatsoever. Just brute forced my way in there. Fusion Core is done. Nidus worms, though, are indeed coming. And Rogue is now capturing most of his side of the map. Really, only this base still remains, and he will have 50% of his side covered. Clem not yet opting to go for this expansion, although I'm assuming we're going to see that before too long. Obviously, there's this base out there too, but it feels quite far out there. Rogue, by the way, just made more Overlords. Oh, dude, he's doing the Overseer thing again. We are back to mass Overseer once more. It's a beautiful thing. Hatchery at the 3 o'clock position added into the mix. Spire number 2 building up right now. We'll probably see double upgrades yet again. And if there is going to be a heavy focus on Liberators, Corruptors, I think that's probably the big change that Rogue will make. Corruptors will probably come out sooner than what we saw in the previous match. But here we go. The Overseers, or not the Overseers, the Changelings are once more advancing. I've mentioned this several times before in the past. Ooh, tactical nuke here coming up as well for Clem. But it took me an embarrassingly long time to learn this. I played StarCraft 2 for about a decade, and I always attack moved onto my opponent's Changelings. It turns out, Changelings are the only unit in the game that if you want to kill them, even though they show up as like friendlies on your side of the map, you don't actually have to attack move them. You can just right-click them. Did you know this? If you're a Terran player and you suspect the Marine that you're looking at is a fake Marine, you can just right-click it. You don't have to actually... I've killed many of my own units over the years before I learned this. Clem clearly knows. Not killing any of his own troops. More Overlords coming up. Oh, you know what the solution apparently is? In the previous game, we didn't have enough Overseers. We clearly needed more Overseers. How many do we build here? So we've got 37 at the moment. He just queued up another, what, 14 Overlords? Are we gonna go, like, 51 Overseers? Is that the play? It seems kind of dumb. Or smart. I can't tell. Intelligence in StarCraft is a bell curve. That's what we have learned. Very different map as well, of course, though. Terran is already spread far thinner than what we saw in the previous game. Somehow those SCVs escaped with their lives. Changelings, though, are still running around the natural, running around the main base. And suddenly, as soon as Clem let go of the pressure, look at the mini-map. Look at the creep spread. I just spent an entire cast the other day complimenting Scarlet's massive amounts of creep on the map. But this may actually take it up to another level. Rogue has just casually covered up about, I don't know, 70% of the map in the goop. Planetary Fortress is being set up. And while this is being set up, Lurkers are moving in over here. And Nidus worms are being positioned in this location too. They can serve as a way to escape. They can also serve as a way to reinforce this some more. And that'll be the end of this planetary. Nidus worm now goes up in the main. There we go. See you later, nerds. Yeah, and now we're back to playing Nidus Worm Whack-A-Mole. And it's extremely annoying. You can see that this is not as smooth as what we just saw on the previous map. Clem being overwhelmed as well by a bunch of corruptors. I think caustic spraying a planetary fortress down would not be a bad idea. He's busy, though, trying to do all of the other things that are going on at the same time, too. Oh, maybe go after some of the structures in the main base. Go after some of the liberators. Not a bad choice. Ling run by to the orbital commence in the bottom left. New Nidus worms being set up over here, too. And Clem kind of feels like he's falling apart. It's obviously not a terrible spot for him to be in, but this is not nearly as elegant a defense as what we saw in the previous game. This kind of looked like what we saw a half year ago, when Clem first started encountering this and, yeah, ran into issues. Obviously, resources lost, yet again, heavily in favor of Terran. But I really think the fact that this is just an extremely exhausting style to play against has a big amount to do with it. You can only be caffeinated for so long, you know? I don't know if Clem drinks coffee, maybe. I know Cyril does, though. So if Cyril does, that means you have to as well, right? That's why he's good at StarCraft. Sauna and coffee. And golf. I've never played golf before. Do you think that's what's holding me back? Never played golf in my life. Do you think if I play golf myself as well, I will become Cyril? I heard golf is for rich people, though. Another worm goes up in the main. Terran army is trying to run back. Liberator does siege up on it, and while this one will be countered, it was on the edge. Still, Clem has a lot of economy. All jokes aside, it is not a bad spot. Like, he's maxed out. He's got a good number of bases. He still has 13 orbital commands, which is a ton. And while, yeah, the Zerg has been very oppressive, you have like 50% more army supply here as the Terran than the Zerg has. So in a straight-up engagement, this Terran army is going to be monstrous. Still, though, the Changeling army, super annoying. Ay, 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 ay. Here come the Overseers yet again. We've had this nuke, by the way. Never using it. What's the point of nukes if you don't use them? Well, I mean in the video game, right? To clarify. And while Clem does do a lot of, yeah, minesweeping here, trying to get rid of the Nidus worms and all of the changelings and all the rest of it, he's not really making a lot of headway, carving a path to those Zerg bases out on the map. And at this point, Rogue is even thinking about taking the base that 100% should be the Terrans. Setting up some static defense, a row of lurkers here too, so a little hit squad of bio is not going to be able to shut it down. Okay. I also wonder if maybe we're going to see a quicker transition towards Brute Lords this time. So, Rogue didn't go Brute Lords in that previous game until it was already too late. My god, the Overseers. Just so oppressive. I complain a lot whenever I look at like other RTS games about legibility. I feel like every other RTS game out there just doesn't have the legibility that StarCraft has. You look at the screen and you realize what the fight is going to look like ahead of time. Now, a lot of it is experience, but these Overseer clumps are kind of ruining it, man. If this is my first impression of StarCraft, I would assume that nothing makes any sense. We have 51, literally 51 Overseers flying around. So that extra bunch of Overlords that he produced when he was at 37, they just got added into the same control group as the Overseers immediately, and he did turn every single last one into an Overseer. That's crazy. We actually have only 3 Overlords. Fungal Growths yet again going down onto the Terran army. Yeah, and at this point, the weather forecast is not stormy. No Protoss in this game. But it is certainly a cloud. Or I guess a swarm of overlords. Here they go again. I mean, they kind of behave like clouds as well. I can see a shape. We can go overseer gazing. How romantic. Actually, you can move in here. It's only a bunch of liberators. These are fully upgraded links. They deal so much damage. Rogue doesn't really know, though. I guess there's something on hold position somewhere. Ah, yeah, the main base over here. The supply depots are up. Meaning that the changelings can't really find an easy path in. Clem starts up the slow push over here. But as soon as that begins, we have the Zerg player at least considering a counterattack in the bottom left. It's a lot of Terran here. Pushing into the choke point does seem dangerous, but there's no splash damage here for Clim. I actually don't mind the idea of just all army hotkeying straight in there. Nidus Worm goes down eventually into the natural expansion, but yeah, here we go again. Dude, so many overseers. What in the world? How is this not considered broken? But then how do none of the other top-level Zerg players play this? I don't get it. It seems so insanely annoying for Terran to deal with. I see a lot of late-game ZBT. Nobody does this. It's only Rogue. What I do see, though, is a lot of other Zerg players losing in the late game against Terran, so maybe it's not a bad idea to give it a try. Still, those ghosts are having a grand old time. Like shooting fish in a barrel for the ghosts over here. Okay, they do get within range there of the spore crawlers. So that means that indeed detection will be granted. Little hit squad towards the 3 o'clock base will indeed snipe the expansion now. Loads of drones are dying. Hard to see how many Zerglings there are in total in this army, but it looks like the Overseers will cover the screen, the Corruptors will kill the Liberators, and the Lynx will destroy everything left over on the ground. Another group of Ghosts now getting some value here on the left, but obviously the Overseers are going to be able to make care as well, or take care rather, of that medevac. Hit squad of Terran units from the 3 o'clock base moves on towards the top right. My main concern right now is the bank. It's never a good time when you are concerned about the bank. But Rogue is rich. And while he hasn't really spent his money because he's low on larva, Clem is practically broke. Rogue can actually remax quite confidently. And as soon as he's got the larva to do so, I'm sure he will. He's only got 4 queens here. They haven't really been injecting, though, judging by the fact that every single last one of them was full of energy. Looks like they are wandering around now and getting some injects done. Okay, yeah, so we do have the quicker transition to broods. Now, ghosts, of course, can snipe brood lords. But when suddenly you are forced to deal with 11 broods and you don't have any Vikings, you don't have a lot of missile turrets, you don't really have a good setup to properly try and counter the brood lords. Brood lords are dangerous. Actually, if you fly your overseers where the brood lords are, I mean, you need to target snipe. Would it be smart to just right-click all the overseers onto the brood lords and just confuse the pathing of the ghosts? Look at this, man. We have a freaking changeling force field over here. In the meantime, there's a Zergling run by in the far bottom left. We had another fight as well on the right side. Brood lords, though, are advancing. The ghosts are just being hammered by a bunch of changelings. They can't get into position. So the ghost snipe is cancelled if they take any form of damage while it's channeling, or if they get out of range. It's weird, but the little changelings are forcing all of these units around. It's so incredibly Zergy though, right? Like you gotta be honest with that. None of the focus on mass spellcasters. None of this like slower moving investor viper type of approach. No, this is just Rogue brute forcing it with the swarm. He's worried about overextending, but he obviously cannot see the amount of resources that Clem really has. He has to make a calculated estimation as to what the Terran likely will have at this point in time. So he decides to play it safe and back off, but... yeah, at this point, I think this game is in the bag for Rogue. Clem's army is still solid, but his economy is not. 15 workers is not much. And he's not really able to go deep onto creep. Here comes the swarm yet again. Yeah, when I say no spellcasters, I guess the overseers are technically spellcasters. Nobody ever really considers them spellcasters, but it's the same for queens. Nobody ever considers queens as spellcasters, but they definitely are. The Brute Lords are throwing their children onto any structure that wants it. But the real fight is happening right over here. We do get a good split. Lings and Banes are trying to get some value. An absolute bloodbath. More and more Lings are streaming across. Rogue, by the way, has entirely, depleted his bank. He was extremely wealthy. This base is up and running, though, and that is a massive problem here for Clem. There's nothing he can do to deal with it. He's going to try and send a medevac out regardless. But 8 Marines in a plane technically should not be enough, although it may still at least alleviate a little bit of the pressure. Rogue is playing this safely as he reasonably can. At this point, Clem has 1 worker. Just 1. Still working away. And you know what? I was criticizing the 1 medevac. But it is getting a bit of value. We have a bunch of burning command centers on the right side of the screen, too. The only mining that Clem now does is from mules. And speaking of those bad boys, a bunch of them are being eaten alive by the Lynx. Although I guess mules are never truly alive. Okay, here we go again. Man, the overseers, they look so menacing. The Terran army looks big at first glance until you realize that most of the units are not real. GG gets cold. It's Rogue who evens up the score. Okay, next up, we find ourselves on the map Winter Madness. I just thought of a crazy idea. What if you actually try to kill the overseers? I know. But what if you try to actually just snipe them down with the ghosts? Or what if you just make like a bunch of Vikings to specifically deal with the overseers? Is this a novel concept? Has anybody considered this? This is like standing up to your bully. Is that something people actually do, or is that only in the movies? Triple command center opener again here for the Terran. Likewise, triple hatchery opener as well here for the Zerg. Yeah, they did buff the Viking. The Viking is 25 minerals cheaper. Maybe we have finally found the reason. I've mentioned this many times. Why in the world did Vikings get a 25 mineral reduction? Nobody asked for it. It was entirely unnecessary. Everybody just sort of shrugged their shoulders and they were like, well, I guess if Blizzard wants to give them a mineral reduction, whatever. Maybe this is why. Actually, that would make sense. Adding on a bunch of Vikings, I think, does make sense. You just gotta be careful that you're not gonna get fungled and parabombed and that the Corruptors don't just destroy you, because obviously Zerg is already making Corruptors to try and deal with the Liberators. Yeah. Sometimes it's easy to, like, look at a StarCraft game or look at a StarCraft strategy and argue in circles. Like nothing ever works because everything is already countered. It's all about the amount of units that you produce, right? And the amount of stuff your opponent actually expects. Well, are we going to do another macro game? Do either of these two players really want to go for that sort of style? I think Rogue probably wants to. I don't think Rogue really is bothered by it. Rogue is also somebody that, like, always likes to go for the most abusive thing he can come up with. He's been doing this his entire StarCraft career. And Rogue has done very well for himself over the years. Making over $1 million in tournament earnings. Not too shabby. Although, honestly, I don't think Clem is too far behind. Yeah, Rogue is a bit of a monster. Lair coming up. Protective Spore Crawlers also on the production tab. These are technically a little bit late. Could be a problem. Clem actually making the majority of his tournament earnings in one tournament in 2024. When he became the world champion, that was like a single event where he earned like $450,000. That's so nuts. Just one event for, you know, playing a video game really well. Oh, careful. Careful, Rogue. Woo, almost a little drone barbecue. Hosted by yours truly. Spire coming up here for the Zerg player. And Baneling Nest on the back of this as well. So we go for a casual Mutaling Bane follow-up now. Whereas on the other side of the map, we've got ourselves a casual 8-Rex push. Okay. So the gloves are off. We are no longer playing macro games. This is both players probably exhausted from those first 2 matches because they took about an hour. It is time to be far more aggressive. And maybe also far more sloppy. These little SCV run-bys with the Zerglings certainly should not be dealing this much damage. 5 workers going down. Likewise as well, though. We already saw the Terran killing 9 drones. Also, a little bit painful. Fourth hatchery. Spire is done. Rogue waiting for the overlords to finish up so he can start making those bad boys all in one big clump. 7 flippy flappies are going to be joining the battlefield in just a moment. Now, of course, in order to go for this build, Zerg usually delay their Evo chamber upgrades. And in this particular instance, we don't even have the evolution chambers yet. I'm expecting them right about right now. There they are. Thank you for making me look smart. That's the big difference, though. Clem is already pretty much done with his 1-1 here. So even though mutas are very scary, he will notice right now, hey, these Evos are late. 90% of the time, even though he hasn't seen the Spire, that means that it is indeed going to be mutas. And, well, right now he's going to get the confirmation. Targets one of them down. Marines do die, though, because of it. No 4th command center here for the Terran. It does mean that he's going to be extremely committed. Oh, Baneling speed just kicked in. He's going to be extremely committed to the 8-Rex. Needs to run away for the time being, though. Siege tanks are being set up. What about the Banelings? Where will they go? They're deciding now to move towards the mineral line instead. 4 SCVs is acceptable. 7 in total, not quite ideal. Also far from the worst case, though. I would love to see 2-2. Yeah, at least a +2 attack. Okay, Clem starts it up. I think that's one of the winning plays here for Clem. If he can go for an all-out attack with these upgrades done, Zerg is really going to struggle. Those upgrades make Terran bio so much better. It's obviously going to be a while, though. This is all extremely nice for Terran. Losing a bunch of mutas there. Creep spread, though, is kicking in. You can see it already on the minimap. Rogue is painting the minimap now. It's a beautiful thing. The creep is the paint. The queens are the brushes. Actually, no. I guess the queens are the artists. They're the Bob Ross. Baneling's going in again. The creep tumors are the brushes. That has to be it. Medevac push, though, in the top right. Still hurting here quite a lot. Clem dancing on the perimeter, trying to snipe those Banelings before they can shut him down. Okay, he gets it. Nicely done right there. He gets it, and then some, too. Not a happy accident right there for Rogue. Pretty good, though, for Clem. who's going to keep up the pressure. Normally, Terrans will wait for 2-2 to kick in before they actually commit. But Clem doesn't like waiting for such things, okay? The entire game is a timing attack. Keep in mind, there is no 4th command center, right? So, him not having a 4th, it means that he's highly committed to getting this game over with. And what he just killed was the opponent's 5th. So this is still 4 versus 3 base economy. Rogue did pull the drones away too. So this is not over yet. Clem actually needs to keep the pressure going. Losing a siege tank here is rough. Medevacs! Ooh, he tries to target down the full ones. Sadly, right there for Rogue, he did not quite target the correct one down, but hard to really know. These upgrades, though. The clock is ticking. Rogue, because of all the pressure, never fired up 2-2 of his own. And that means those Marines, they are going to be stronger for a very long time to come. Still, though, fighting on creep against Banelings is always scary, but the splits are amazing. More Banelings coming up. Clem is already doing a bit of creep clearing yet again. He hates art, or at least paint. Especially for a Frenchman, I feel like that's a little out of character, no? Anyway. Ooh, oh, okay, well, you know what? That group of Banelings achieved absolutely nothing. And Clem gets a much easier win in this particular game. GG. Okay, next up, we find ourselves on Mothership. Clem has been looking around the map. He scouted the top right-hand corner. Turns out that's not where the opponent spawned. The Reaper, though, already making a beeline towards the bottom right. Let's see. We're going to dance again. Zerglings and Reapers, they're always ready to dance. Well, at least the Reapers are. This is like one of those annoying couples, you know, where like one of them really likes dancing, but the other one doesn't at all. Zergling is like, yo, get out of here. I don't want to dance. Stop embarrassing me in front of my friends. I don't like this at all. Triple command center opener here for Clem. Triple hatchery opener here for Rogue. Do you think StarCraft players dance? Who do you think? Like, of all the pro gamers out there, who do you think is the best dancer? It's a trick question. I don't think any of them can probably dance. Nah, there's gotta be some. There's gotta be some that are probably really good. You can type /dance in game. I do remember at one of the Home Story Cup after parties, for some reason there was a camera running. I don't know why. But there were some very great images of Hero Marine showing off all of the dance moves while being maybe somewhat intoxicated. I feel like there's gotta be at least one of them that like is actually extremely good, but just nobody knows, you know? I can see Björn being like a phenomenal dancer, like actually, but he's just never really had an opportunity to show it off. I can see that happening. One of the Koreans may have been like, you know, they may have wanted to be a K-pop star or something when they were young. I can see that happening. Anyways, Alien's driving around trying to get some damage done. Likewise for the Reaper, not so lucky. Two Hellions together with a Reaper end up dying. And this is a bit of a sloppy start here for Clim. Yeah, the truth is, not only are pro gamers humans, not only do they indeed fatigue, as we've already learned, but they probably also have spent the majority of their childhood, teenage years, maybe early 20s, not going out on the weekends, but instead playing video games all day. I know. This may be news to many of you. I personally have definitely not done that ever. Party boy loco over here. Yeah. No, it's probably doesn't help your dancing skills very much, I can tell you. I can't dance for the life of me. All right, Lair coming up. Fourth hatchery in the middle. Trying to be a little bit tempting here, at least for Clem. It's so exposed, right? Like, this base is far forward. Hellion production, by the way, still ongoing, despite the fact losing a bunch. These Hellions are going deep. The Queens are way too far off, though. I don't really know exactly where the Queens were going. I guess they're working right now onto one of those... Ooh, Banshees? You can see, though, that the players are really starting to make some sloppy errors. If you compare this to the first game of the series, the second game of the series, this is a bit of a mess. We're going to celebrate yet again with a Spire. No Baneling Nest. No Baneling Nest, no Evo Chamber. It's a risky move here for Rogue. It means that if there's like a Stimpack timing attack that properly hits, it has so much potential to just straight up win the game. He's basically gonna have Mutaling. And this is not Brood War, last time I checked. 3 Hellions moving through, trying to see if they can get a kill. Alright. They get 1 kill, he doesn't really want to sacrifice them any more than that. Ling run by yet again on the other side of the map. Nothing here to defend against this either. Okay. Drones will have to be rebuilt. Evo Chambers coming up. Baneling Nest also in the mix. It does mean, though, that Baneling speed is going to be super late. And while that doesn't have to be a problem, if Terran goes for a push, and I think Clem can certainly think about it. I mean, he's got Stimpack done right now. He's going to have 1-1 here in about a minute. I don't believe Baneling speed is going to be timely enough. Mutas here are coming, though. Yeah, and this is Clem we're talking about. Trying his best to move out yet again because he's got units. And when you have units, you may as well test the waters. Plug bench is going in. It's just Ling Muta, though. Just Ling Muta, there's no Banelings. I guess there's just enough. A couple of slow Banelings do show up, but I barely count slow Banelings as Banelings. I'm sorry to the Banelings themselves. But without centrifugal hooks, those units just don't hit nearly as hard. We actually have the second Evo Chamber not utilized here. Now he fires it up. It's a bit messy. Creep spread looking mediocre, at least in this section of the map. Okay, Armory coming up. It's also delayed. Armory should have already been done, but 2-2 will begin. We're losing the crispness, you know? It's like a bunch of grapes that have been sitting out too long. They're kind of getting shriveled up. That's the type of gaming we're looking at. They're probably still good. They're still better than many other fruit out there, but we have certainly not got the refined engagements that we saw in the first couple games of this season or of this series. Thor now on the production tab too. We're gonna go into Widow Mines. Drilling Claws will be done in just a moment. Now, across the board, I do think that if you are fatigued, this is the type of playstyle you should not play. Mutaling Bane is extremely flimsy, right? Like, it's if you make a little mistake, it's very prone to error, I suppose. Make a little mistake, I think Mutas are just not such a good unit to go for. These are big brain units, not small brain units, which is why I never play Mutas myself. My brain is too small. Yeah. My brain is too smooth. I do really like the Thors, though. The Thors here are nice. We're gonna force a lot of micro. Okay. Clem yet again moving out. It's a weird timing. 2-2 is supposed to be done right now, but the armory was late. And he's actually gonna be on even upgrades here for like the next half minute or so, which may actually work out nicely here for Rogue. Rogue, though, going in for the counter-attack right now. He knows that the upgrades are likely going to be better for Terran, when in fact they aren't. Widow Mines there, putting in a bunch of work. Terran army thinks about splitting up, and they will split up. So some of the units are running back home. The other half is still committing to trying to kill the fourth. Banelings and Zerglings run into the natural expansion. We have the Bio army moving forward indeed. One Thor in the mix. Banelings, though, also reinforcing all of this. Mutas making it difficult for the Terran to really fight on creep, because you'd never know where that Zerg army is located. Banelings rolling through. Medivacs trying their best. Splitties here, pretty darn good. So far, actually, the units lost tab. Or the resources lost here. The workers killed. It's not so terrible for the Zerg. Now that Terran, though, is able to bring their entire army together, and now that 2-2 is done, delayed or not, there is going to be a very significant power difference here. Fourth hatchery of the Zerg player dies. He does have a backup as well a little bit further south, but he does not have the numbers to stop the advancement of the Terran army. What a brilliant series. We started off with some really solid macro games. Both of the players just looking phenomenal across the board. But then as the series progressed, I think this must have been like an hour and a half or so of intense gaming for the both of them. You could see the refinement slowly wearing off, right? A lot of players will practice for... You see the same in like football, right? You will practice for like a 90-minute game. But then as soon as the game gets extended, everything becomes a bit of a mess. And I think this series certainly also went longer than both of these players generally practice for. Either way, it's a 3-1 victory right here for Clem. But despite the map score, I really do like what Rogue was cooking up with the Overseers. That was brilliant.